Welcome everybody, Cabinet on Tuesday the 25th of February, nearly the end of the month. I'll point out that it's Matt Prosser's very last public meeting, last meeting in the Chamber, last public meeting. We've done several goodbyes already, but yeah, feel free to do any more. And his leaving drinks are on Thursday. So, yeah. Please remember to switch off your phones, put them on silent, etc. Mention who you are when you speak for the first time on an item, that sort of thing. So we'll kick off with apologies. Are there any? Nope, no apologies. Second one is the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on 28th of January 2024. Any members of Cabinet got any issues of correctness? Nope, can't see anybody. Okay, I'll sign those later. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any? No. I do have one potential direct declaration of interest. So on item 11, which we've moved to the end of the agenda, which is the report on our replacement ERP system, my employer is one of the people who are likely to tender, I suspect. So I won't be chairing that item. I'll leave the room for the very last item, and Councillor Biggs will take over from me. So item 4 is public participation. We have 2 questions from members of the public. The first is from Mr. Robert Home. Is he online? There's an RH on the screen. Can you hear us, Mr. Home? Is that you? You need to take yourself off mute. And if you've got a camera, could you switch it on? It's not a problem if you don't. No, Mr. Home? No. Should we go to the next question, which is from Mr. David Redgewell, who's also supposed to be online, which is DR, and he's just gone off mute. So over to you.
Hello, Chair. Thank you very much for allowing me to ask my question. My question is about the bus service improvement plan in Dorset. We got about £3 million from UK government for the bus grant this year. Not enough, in my opinion. We should be obviously lobbying the county MPs, including the ones in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, BCP. But more importantly, in order for us to get more money, we must have a bus advisory forum and panel meeting. It was a bit of a surprise to me at the WATAG meeting, which I go to in Bridport, to hear the first group were changing bus proposals in June, disconnecting their rail service from their bus service. So the 1855, as it would become, from Axminster to Bridport and Lyme, and then on to Weymouth, would in fact run at that time and not 7:15 in order to meet the trains. Now, if we have a bus service advisory board and we have a forum, which we should have, then these issues can be raised by passengers directly with the council as the transport authority and with First. I've just come from an integrated transport Western Gateway meeting with government this afternoon in Bristol, and it's very important we integrate our transport. So what I'm asking you tonight is, one, can you look at what First is up to as usual on the X53, X51 for the June timetable, and make sure there's connectivity, even if they're not running the railways in May. It'll be a nationalised company, South Western Rail, and to make sure that we have a advisory forum. And we haven't had that forum because I'm a member of it for about, well, not since the new administration took over. So I'm just urging that because I want to see more money for buses in Dorset desperately. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Redgewell. I think your question was slightly different than the one that was actually written down. But I think Councillor Andrews will do his best to answer them.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Councillor John Andrews from Sherborne East and Cabinet Member for Place Services. Mr. Redgewell, thank you very much for the question you submitted. I will answer that one. We share this disappointment regarding Dorset Council's allocated bus grant funding. We have provided written evidence to the Transport Select Inquiry, buses, connecting communities, and highlighted the disparity of funding within the South West. We will continue to raise the issue of fairer bus funding for Dorset at every opportunity. I've recently asked Councillor Derek Beard to chair the bus user and stakeholder group. We are in the process of setting a date for the next bus group meeting, and invites will be sent out shortly. This will give local groups the opportunity to explore. issues with the council and local bus operators. Future bus group meetings will be held twice a year. Thank you, Mr. Ridgewell.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think Mr. Home is definitely not on the screen anymore. I will read out his question because Councillor Robinson would like to answer it in public. So I'll just read the question out from the screen I've got in front of me. The question is, there's some preamble, obviously. I hold joint power of attorney for an elderly Dorchester resident with dementia. After 2 months in acute care for a leg injury, she was discharged by Dorset County Hospital in May 24 to a residential care home in Dorchester. That care home could not meet her care needs, and neither could a second one from which we moved her to a nursing home in January 25. In October 24, we asked for her eligibility for NHS Continuing Healthcare (CHC) to be assessed. A multidisciplinary team (MDT), which included a CHC social worker employed by Dorset Council, conducted the Decision Support Tool (DST) assessment in October 24. The MDT recommended that she was eligible for CHC, but in December we were informed that NHS Dorset denied eligibility. The regulations apparently are: NHS Dorset is an integrated care board subject to National Health Service Commissioning Board and Clinical Commissioning Groups responsibilities and standing rules, regulations 2012 issued under the National Health Service Act 2006. Regulation 22 is an entitled duty of relevant bodies joint working with social services authorities. The 2012 regulations require an ICB to comply with a national framework for NHS continuing healthcare and NHS-funded nursing care 2022, which sets out the DST procedure in practice guidance under the heading, and I quote, "What are the elements of good multidisciplinary assessment of needs" in section PG 21. Within PG 21 is this clause, 21.4. ICBs and local authorities should consider agreeing joint models of assessment documentation and having regular training or awareness events to support them. The joint model. The implicit purpose of a joint model is to avoid an MDT producing a DST that is open to review by an ICB, applying a differing interpretation of the evidence when making its decision on eligibility for CHC. Lots of acronyms there. In the case of a person for whom I hold power of attorney, the existence of a properly effective joint model with both the MDT members and the ICB staff trained in its operation would have avoided a disagreement of the interpretation of evidence. The DST process would not have been prolonged by more than a month, and I would unlikely to have grounds for lodging an appeal against the decision of the ICB to deny a CHC. The current version of the national framework came into effect in July 22, since when its guidance and advisory provisions should have been considered and were deemed appropriate implemented. So we get to the question. The question is, has Dorchester Council considered agreeing with NHS Dorset a joint model of assessment? Mr. Horn is on his line. Okay, so I've now just read your question. I hope that was okay, Mr. Horn. And Councillor Robinson.
If you can hear me, yes, that's fine.
Hello, Mr. Horde. Good evening. My name is Steve Robinson. I'm portfolio holder for adult social care for Dorset. I appreciate the frustration that there is on Zoom or whatever this technology is, but also I want to thank the leader for reading the question out. The reason I asked for this specifically is because I believe passionately in how we care for people in communities. So thank you for your question. Firstly, may I offer my personal appreciation for the role that you've taken on. Power of attorney is a commitment that is a true demonstration of love and compassion, not just from family members, but sometimes between lifelong friends who are there for each other in the hardest of times. So in response to your question, I can confirm that Dorset Council, not Dorchester Council, does support the joint assessment process through being involved in contributing to the Decision Support Tool, the DST, acronyms are our lifeblood, which is the joint assessment tool used by the multidisciplinary team to provide a recommendation to the NHS on eligibility for continuing healthcare. Dorset Council Adult Social Care has developed a dedicated CHC hub through which we carry out our assessment activity for CHC. And the adult social care practitioners, therefore, attending these DSE meetings are all trained and experienced in CHC. However, within the Integrated Care Board, NHS Dorset retains the final decision-making responsibility regarding the NHS continuing healthcare eligibility. These eligibility decisions should be based on recommendations made by the multidisciplinary team in accordance with the process that is set out in the national framework, as you point out. The national framework states that only in exceptional circumstances and for clearly articulated reasons should the multidisciplinary team's recommendation not be followed. There is a 6-month period following a CHC outcome for people to submit an appeal of the eligibility decision to NHS Dorset. There is clearly some considerable work still to be done in this area, and Dorset Council are currently advocating at governmental level for a better recognition of the people of Dorset in a number of areas, of which this is one. So, Mr. Horn, I do sincerely thank you for your question, and I look forward to keeping in contact in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Horn.
Thank you.
So the next agenda item is questions from members of this council, and Councillor Jill Taylor has got a question.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. Councillor Jill Taylor, Cabinet Member for Health and Housing. My question's also about CHC funding, and you'll see the question that I've just done. NHS Continuing Healthcare is a package for adults aged 18 or over, which is arranged and funded solely by the NHS. In order to receive NHS CHC funding, individuals have to be assessed by the Integrated Care Boards according to a legally prescribed decision-making process to determine whether the individual has primary health care. That is all fine, I get that. The initial application is carried out with a healthcare professional. There is then an assessment to decide if there are grounds to progress the application. There are several routes to apply depending on need, but many residents apply for the standard NHS CHC route. Nationally, the conversion rate is around 20%. It's a postcode lottery, and I am pleased to say that Dorset is higher than the national average at 34%. These are the figures from Q1 24-25. This does, however, mean that currently on that quarter figures, there's 66% of applications are turned down. And that's the ones that I want to talk about. For residents who go through this application process, it is really, really traumatic when they are already dealing with a very difficult situation. I'm saying this from personal experience. When the applicant is self-funding, it means that if refused, they are asked to jump through all these hoops, and then they get no financial assistance with their healthcare needs, and basically they end up picking up all the costs, as is the case in my case. For residents, however, who are not self-funding, there is an impact on the budget of adult services. The needs of the clients are assessed, and where necessary, they are supported in applying for a CHC. If they are turned down, which bear in mind this is 66% of them are being turned down, the council is then liable for the cost of their ongoing care. Due to my personal circumstances, I speak to many healthcare professionals who have given me anecdotal stories from residents they are trying to help who are being refused. And I've had some horrendous stories on this, but as I say, these are anecdotal stories that I've had. I understand that concerns have been raised by a member of the public who, the gentleman who's just been before me, Bob Horn, has also contacted me in this. His mother is applying for CHC and he's finding the same problems jumping through all these hoops. I've also contacted one of the MPs, as I was advised to do. I've previously asked for this issue to be scrutinised by People and Health Scrutiny Committee due to the impact it's having on self-funded residents, and particularly on Dorset Council, because it is actually costing us an awful lot of money. and I ask the Cabinet for Adult Social Care to make this request again. I'm more than happy to come and talk to the Scrutiny Committee, provided it's in confidence, please, because this is a very personal issue to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Robinson's going to respond.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor, for your question. As Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, I recognise the challenge that this presents for families when the person they care for is assessed as not being eligible for NHS continuing healthcare. The threshold for people to apply for consideration for CHC eligibility, the National Checklist tool, is intentionally lower than the CHC criteria itself. This was with the intention to make sure that people are not excluded from applying and everyone gets full consideration at the decision support tool stage. There will always, sadly, therefore, be a percentage of people who are considered for CHC who are likely not to be eligible. Adult Social Care in Dorset is currently working with colleagues in BCP and the ICB to agree a joint funding policy for people who the local authorities fund have health needs. Or local authorities fund who have health needs but are not CHC eligible. The work on the position for people who fund their own care is not currently part of this work. I would be very happy to make this representation for this issue to be scrutinised by the People and Health Scrutiny Committee due to the impact that it is having on self-funding residents across Dorset, and I believe that the Chair would like to also comment.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. I believe we have some technical difficulties. I think it's been resolved now, we think. Okay, so apologies if you know, got a hand up. Councillor Coombs.
Thank you, Chairman. Tony Coombs, Vowood Ward, Chairman of People and Health Scrutiny Committee. I'd like to respond to the answer to the question from Councillor Jill Taylor about Scrutiny Committee. First of all, I need to make it very clear that scrutiny has to be independent within the Council to be effective. And it is written in statute that the executive should not try to exercise control over the work of the Scrutiny Committee. I would also add that, yes, I have had a conversation with Councillor Taylor, but I've not received a formal request to consider anything at committee. However, I am aware that this is a national problem. There are issues, and I believe that through ADAS it's going through to the Select Committee. As is with other issues in Dorset that are also national issues, I'm very reluctant to bring something forward quickly until the work at a national level has been done, because we need to make sure that we've got the answers that we can actually do something with. So I'm more than happy to speak to officers and get them to do some scoping for me. And then I will bring a brief paper to scrutiny for my committee to look at. But at this time, because of where we are with the national position, I cannot guarantee that we will take it forward. One of the other reasons is about capacity. We are supposed to be doing an in-depth review into EHCPs, which was agreed in November. The scoping document was agreed with the review to start on the 27th of January. I'm still waiting for the first date. So you will understand the difficulties I have in making sure that things happen. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. So the next agenda item is 6 for the plan. There's a few things coming up. 4 on next month's agenda, which includes the DIP, carbon reduction targets, procurement and asset transfers, all of which are very exciting, I'm sure. Anyone have any comments on the forward plan? Are we happy with that? Okay, in which case we'll move on to the next item, which is public health disaggregation progress and overview of key decisions. And I believe that's Councillor Jill Taylor.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Taylor, portfolio holder for health and housing. Just a quick overview on this. The public health function was transferred from the NHS to local government in 2013. At that time, Dorset agreed shared arrangements between the then 3 top-tier councils. These arrangements continued at LGR with shared arrangements between Dorset Council and Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. Last April, BCP served notice that they wish to exit these arrangements with a view to establishing their own public health team and their own Director of Public Health as of April 2025. A programme was agreed between both councils for transitional arrangements and for disaggregation, which was officer-led, as it should be. Each council has appointed a Director of Public Health, and in Dorset Council we have created a role of Director of Public Health and Prevention, who will lead on public health and community and public protection functions for Dorset Council area. The financial arrangements for the disaggregation are in line with the cost-sharing agreements already in place. Trade unions have been involved all along and interim staff structures have been agreed. It is envisaged that the transfer of staff to each new council will be complete at the start of April 2025. There is a similar paper to this which has gone to BCP Council in early February, and they've approved the recommendations because, as you will see, these recommendations need approving by both councils. Cabinet are asked to acknowledge the huge amount of work that has been carried out, and I would also like to thank all those involved, but give a special mention to Sam Crowe, who I have to say has been so professional. His professionality has been outstanding throughout all this process, which I'm sure has not been very easy for him. There are a number of key decisions that Cabinet needs to make as a result of disaggregation. It is proposed that the Live Well Dorset shall remain as a shared service with BCP, hosted by Dorset Council, based on the success of this initiative, which has been running for several years. All current contracts for the shared service should continue until the end of the contract or when there is a suitable breakpoint, and then make decisions regarding the future of these, rather than trying to split them all off for April this year, which was just really not on. It's not a sensible way to go. We have also recently had confirmation that the central government grant for rough sleeper drug and alcohol treatment, which we have received since 2021, has been extended, and the Cabinet are asked to approve the awarding of this grant to a suitable provider or providers. Recommendations are before you in the papers, and I would like to propose them, please. Can I have a seconder?
Councillor Sutton, you wish to say anything? Take that as a proposal. Anybody want to comment? Councillor Somper.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Absolutely support this very pragmatic approach and also echo the incredible work of Sam Crowe and his team and recognising how difficult that has been. It obviously wasn't the decision of Dorset Council, but we'll just leave that there. Sorry, I should have said Councillor Jane Somper, Beacon Ward. Just a couple of questions, if I may. The Joint Public Health Board, which has been disbanded, which was the opportunity for members to examine performance and scrutinise all the data and the success of the services. I just wonder how that, because that's been disbanded, where that opportunity for scrutiny and examination will take place for members. I think that's quite important. So if you could address that. There was one quick question around the RS. Help me out here, Councillor Taylor. The drug and the RSDATG. That's the one. Thank you. Yes, I know. So I think that's possibly going to be a consortium of groups to provide that service, which is great. Just to ensure that they're understanding about no overlap and whether or not they all have their own specialisms within them. But obviously the officers will do work on that. but that's a very important part. I was going to ask a question about the redundancies, but I won't. I'll take that out of here. And if I could just say how brilliant Live Well Dorset is. I'm really pleased to see that. I have actually used that service myself very recently in their health checks, and I know that was obviously a very important part of the work that they were doing, and it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So I absolutely support this and the pragmatic approach that you're taking, recognising the difficulties, but also wanting to understand where engagement and examination and scrutiny of the service will be able to take place for members.
Thank you, Councillor Somper. I also used the Live Well service recently. They were great, weren't they? Councillor Taylor, do you wish to respond? I know Mr Crowe wants to respond as well.
Thank you. I think for both of these, I will pass to Sam Crowe to answer for them. The Joint Public Health Board has basically been replaced in the last year by myself and the other portfolio holder from BCP. So we've been monitoring it over the last year because where the Public Health Board was dissolved at the beginning of this process. I'm assuming that going forward, scrutiny will be part of our plans going forward, but I will hand over to Sam for that one. And also the rough sleeper funding, that will be a case of extending what we've already got and monitoring the contracts that we've got. But I'll also hand over to Sam to comment on that. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Sam Crowe. I'm the Joint Director of Public Health for Dorset and BCP Councils. Thank you for the questions. And also thank you for the recognition of the work of the team in remaining professional and getting through this process. I'd also like to thank Aidan Dunn, as Executive Director for Corporate Development, and Gillian Kay, the Corporate Director for Wellbeing from BCP Council, who together have been the SROs for this complex programme, and actually, in my experience, has been one of the better experiences of disaggregation, if it can ever be said to be positive. It's been conducted very professionally, with good humour, and very effectively as part of that process. Just picking up on the two questions tonight, I think it's fair to say that the pragmatic approach that we adopted in trying to disaggregate the complex service means that there's still quite a lot of work for both directors of public health to do in thinking through how the new public health teams will work in their respective councils. And that question of how we interact with member oversight and scrutiny is a very live one. I'm very happy to continue discussions. In the interim, as Councillor Taylor has said, I do meet with portfolio holders regularly and indeed with opposition members as well. But it is a very live question, and I think it's important that members do get the opportunity to look at the full scope of the work that public health does. In terms of the rough sleepers grants, following discussions with providers, the proposal is that the grant funding is going to be given to a lead third sector provider. That provider is the current main provider of drug and alcohol services that we commission, called Way Through. They're developing a memorandum of understanding with the remaining 4 other homeless providers, and they'll deliver that service in line with the service specification. I think the question about making sure that there's collaboration and coordination rather than competition is a really good one. So what they will be doing is managing that arrangement through an integrated governance framework. So that will allow a partnership board and an operational board the opportunity to check on how that grant's being used and to make sure that it's delivering the outcomes against the specification. Public Health have a place on that governance board and will continue to have oversight of what's being delivered. And then finally, Public Health will continue to contract manage that arrangement alongside the core contract with the drug and alcohol treatment provider, and then monitored through setting realistic ambitions, including those that focus on quality. So hopefully that gives some assurance that that arrangement we think is pragmatic, we think is fairly simple, and it should be a good way of delivering against the grant. Thank you.
Happy with that, Councillor Somper? Yeah. Anybody else want to comment? Non-cabinet or cabinet? No. In which case, does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations laid out by Councillor Taylor? Nope. In which case, it's passed. It's approved. Thank you. So item 8 is Local Development Scheme Update. So that's Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you, Chairman. So the paper you have before you, the Local Plan Development Scheme Update, I should say also, I'm Councillor Shane Bartlett, Ward Member for Wimble Minster and Portfolio for Planning and Emergency Planning. So the paper you have before you for the Local Plan Development Scheme, by March 6, 2025, the government requested councils to review the Local Plan Development Scheme within 12 weeks of the NPPF adoption. Just to give some background, currently, the old local plan scheme, there is a risk to change to the new model once we have a clear understanding of what government wants from the new local plan scheme, but we don't have that detail yet. And the officers are having to work on the presently what we've got that we know from the government. In June 2019, the decision to start a pan-Dorset local plan was taken, consultation of a full draft local plan in January 21. In March 2022, Natural England brought their water quality issues to the table, nutrient neutrality, which has caused us significant issues. After 2021 consultation, also more work was needed on the Weymouth flooding and needs for gypsy and traveller sites as well. Those were identified. In December 2024, government revised the NPPF and demanded higher housing numbers, 3,219 new homes required per year. That's an 80% uplift. Government intention is to reform the planning process. Dorset Council need to submit a local plan for submission by December 2026. That 2026 date is ambitious given the fact that there is so much uncertainty around the direction the planning will take from government, as we still haven't got those details yet. Further consultation needed this year after the call for more development sites, which are needed to accommodate the increase in housing numbers. That's going to cause a slight delay and additional work. After that consultation, then work will begin on the detail of creating the local plan draft for further consultation in August 2026. Target is for a local plan adoption in spring of 27. However, we are still waiting information from government about whether we need to transition to the new model local plan. This might mean adopting a local plan by mid-2028. Working on a minerals waste plan guidance gathering and consultation work could put meeting the local plan deadline by December 2026 at risk. This will cause financial pressures to local plan budget, still unknowns as to whether we should do a combined waste and minerals plan and a local plan or separating the two as we are still waiting government guidance. Presently, we are doing separate plans at the moment. So I think, Chairman, you will see from the report that's in front of you, awaiting government decisions has been most frustrating for the officers, and they are doing their best to try and work through that. I would also point out that in October of this year, we lose our 5-year land supply, and therefore we're open to speculative development. So I recommend, propose going for the recommendations within the report that's in front of you, and I believe Councillor Biggs is going to second. Thank you.
Richard Biggs, Property Assets and Economic Growth, and I represent Poundbury, Dorchester Ward. I'm very happy to second that. Those of you, and there's quite a few in the chamber who took part in economic development workshops, will know how important planning is part of the jigsaw to economic growth. So it's essential that we try and do this as quick as possible. But as Councillor Bartlett has said, there's as few unknowns. It feels rather like we're travelling down the road. We know where the objective is. The sat-nav saying we'll get there at X, but the government's going to put a diversion in. And we've all been in that situation where you suddenly panic and you realise, don't know how long that's going to delay me. But we need to be agile. We need to do this as quick as possible, but we need to be mindful that we need to adapt to whatever the government throws at us and try and deliver it as quick as possible, but the right plan in the right place that can, I hope, assist us in economic growth and all the other things, housing supply, that the plan will deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Biggs. I'd just like to echo that. It's really important for this authority that we have a local plan in place. The deadline of the end of 26, which is next year, is ambitious, but we're going to do our utmost to hit it. The government may derail us, but if they don't, we are absolutely going to throw everything at it. We have existing local plans which are essentially out of date, apart from Purbeck. They're mostly written, 10 years ago or more, and they're not fit for purpose. And also, if devolution comes down the line, who knows where that goes? It's really important that we have a local plan for Dorset in place for the strategic MER. So I think, Councillor Jesperson, you had your hand up first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Sherry Jesperson, Hillforts and Upper Tarrants Ward. And I welcome this report. I'm very pleased to hear you say we're going to throw everything we need to at this. We cannot overstate the urgency of getting our local plan in place. I am concerned that the government might throw yet another spanner in the works and delay us further. I hope that if there's any possibility of resisting that, in other words, if there's any flexibility at all, we will resist that further delay and we will press on. So my question was a quite specific question about the design codes which are coming as part of this. Now, I understand that the design codes that we're looking at are Dorset-wide, so quite high level, and underneath those will be the design codes for specific communities that will come forward in the neighbourhood plans. There are some communities who, for good reasons, don't have neighbourhood plans or whose neighbourhood plans are going out of date. I wonder if we could give some thought to something that we can invite communities who can't do neighbourhood plans to produce along the lines of the old, they were village design statements, and they were like neighbourhood plans, but they just focus on designs. And I know that I have one or two villages in my ward, for example, who are daunted by doing a neighbourhood plan, but would be very happy to revive their village design statement. So it's just a question, it doesn't need an answer today, but I wonder if we could consider whether or not there's a role for village design statements or some document like that, that is kind of a neighbourhood plan light, that would enable those communities to contribute to the all-important design part of the local plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jesperson. My own village, Osmington, has a village design statement. It is a supplementary plan document. I'm not sure it's still in effect, though. That's, I suspect so. So over to Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Jesperson, for the question. I'm happy to meet with you outside of this meeting and have that discussion with you. Just to make you aware, I'm in discussion with officers at the moment to set up a cross-party steering group that would look at those design codes, and I'd welcome to have that conversation with you and see how we can feed that into what we're doing. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to comment? Anybody in the room? No, not seeing anybody. In which case, does anybody on the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations as laid out? This is a really important paper, actually. No, okay, in which case, it's recommended. Thank you. So the next one is Councillor Bartlett. Again, this is the Fontwell Magna Neighbourhood Plan.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the Fontwell Neighbourhood Plan that you have before you, with basically an updating of the plan. The village took the decision to make a neighbourhood plan back in 2018. They've updated that now, which is, I think, is welcomed. It's really good proactive work that they've been doing within the community, and I just would go along with the proposal in the recommendations that's in the paper, and I believe Councillor Clifford's going to second, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Simon Clifford, Cabinet Member for Finance. Yeah, very delighted to second this. I think our neighbourhood plans are terrific. I note that we got a recommendation to congratulate the team. I think we could go one better than that. This is an outstanding plan that's been produced by, just a quick look at it, almost 20% of the parish have been involved in one way or another. This is a great little village. I used to live around the corner from it. I know it very well. And I have very fond memories of it. In particular, I believe I'm right, as I'm going to look at the councillor across the row now. I believe it's the first posthumous VC was given to Bengal engineer who lived and was born and raised in Fontmell Magna. Military things are very close to my heart. It's a great place to go and visit. I recommend that people go and have a look and spend some time there. It's got a lovely community. I remember learning clog dancing in a village hall there many, many years ago. It was the loudest thing I've ever done in my life. So I thoroughly recommend, I'm happy to second this and thoroughly recommend anyone goes and pays a visit to a tremendous community.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clifford. I think they're probably like a 20-mile-an-hour zone as well. Councillor Somper.
They would very much like a 20 miles an hour zone. Councillor Andrews. Yes, thank you. Yes, Councillor Jane Somper, Beacon Ward, and yes, Fontmell Magna Parish is in my ward, and it is a very beautiful village. It has a great pub, great school, great village hall, great community feel. Springhead is also there, very beautiful place where there are concerts and all sorts of things. It's a really thriving community, and I want to personally congratulate the Fontmell Magna Neighbourhood Plan Group and the Parish Council for their enormous dedication, their hard work and commitment in reviewing and modifying this neighbourhood plan. The time and effort put in to the process has been truly commendable, and the success is well deserved. So, and the contributions are going to make a lasting impact on the future of the Fontmell Magna neighbourhood area. And I'm delighted to see that this plan recommended for approval. Well done to everyone involved, and I hope you all vote for it. Thank you.
Any other comments? No. It's great that they've actually renewed it. And there'll be more in the pipeline, let's hope. And so, anybody disagree with the recommendations as set out? No. In which case, we recommend it. Thank you. The next agenda item is Councillor Sutton, I believe, the termination of school admissions arrangements 26 to 27.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't intend to go over what's in the paper because everyone will presumably have read it. It's business as usual. It's part of our annual statutory duty. As always, it's been a collaborative process, and the schools are aware of the planned changes. As per the paper, it affects Gillingham. Oh, thank you. Affects Gillingham, Hazelby Bryan Primary, Greenford Primary, and Sturminster Marshall First School. No responses to the 6-week consultation were in fact received. So I'd like to propose the recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. I believe Councillor Robinson is going to second.
Yes, Chair, very happy to second.
Any members? Councillor Jesperson.
On behalf of the members from the Gillingham ward, I would just mention that Gillingham is in Kent. In Dorset, we are lucky to have Gillingham.
Okay, I don't think that was a question, but anybody else wish to comment on correct pronunciations? No. In which case, does anybody disagree with the recommendation? No. In which case, we pass it. Thank you. In which case, I'm going to leave the chair. I'll just leave the room, and Councillor Biggs will take over.
Thank you. Councillor Arndt has now left the room. So agenda item 11 on your paper is the Enterprise Resource and Planning System. Councillor Ben Wilson will take us through that, please.
Thank you. Ben Wilson, South East Purbeck, portfolio holder for corporate development and transformation. So the Enterprise Resource Planning System Replacement Programme, or ERP, replacement programme. And the ERP is our core system that we use in the council for finance, HR, payroll and procurement. Obviously, this project is brought forward as integral to the broader Our Future Council transformation programme. The ERP is very much one of our core systems that we use in the council, and therefore this is really the first big core component part of our Future Council that we're progressing at this point. Today in the council, we operate a system provided by a German software company called SAP or SAP, and it's an on-premise system, i.e. we keep the data on site. This system that we operate today, it's been in place since 2009. It will go out of support in December 2027. So SAP is the owner of the system, or provider, sorry, will no longer provide support, and more critically, they won't provide updates. What SAP are doing is they have bought out new systems, and all of the new mod cons for these areas are provided in their new systems. So, and that's happening today. This kind of technology has moved on considerably since the Dorset Council system was put in place. New versions of this technology are cloud-based. They're far more user-friendly and more user-centric, and they contain built-in automation and indeed AI capabilities. What the work that's happened to date as regards to this programme is that there's been an assessment in terms of what the most appropriate way forward would be, and 4 options have been looked at, starting from an option of actually continuing with our existing system, but finding other ways in which to support it, to the option that we're recommending today, which is to replace the current ERP system, and then a third option, which was to rather than have one system as replacement, look at multiple different systems that you could join together. As I say, it's the second option that has been brought forward for recommendation, and the reasoning rationale is contained within the report. And from my perspective, because of the progress that's been made in this systems area, in this technology area, it's a real opportunity for Dorset Council to replace what we have today with something that is more automated, that will align to the outcomes we're trying to achieve through our Future Council in terms of efficiencies, in terms of better use of technology, better use of automation, and indeed that more user-centric design. So the request today is actually to go out for procurement and select the new system. We plan to come back to Cabinet either in May or June, depending on how the exact timings fall, with a recommendation of our preferred system choice. So it means we have roughly 3 months in which to perform that activity. Before I close, I just want to make a few points. The funding for this capital project in the report, the capital element is 11.7 million. That was included within the Our Future Council business case that was brought to Cabinet in January. The benefits, similarly, because they're so interconnected with Our Future Council, were included within that Our Future Council business case. And some of you may have noted they're not spelled out as financial benefits within the report in front of you. But they are very much, as I say, very much joined to what was presented in January. The last point I want to make is something that many of you will be aware of from experiences you'll hear from other local authorities and indeed other commercial businesses. These implementations are high risk, and that's as stated on the front of this report. They have reputations of going over budget and taking more time than is projected. There are indeed lots of, and part of that is the fundamental fact that you are touching the finance system. You will impact, and data will need to be transposed, and with that comes a degree of risk. We have 3 months now before we actually start this project with which to ensure that we are properly set up to be successful. Already in place is a technology design authority. So already that is sitting as a governance board that is up and running. What we also need to focus on over the next 3 months is to make sure that we've got the right capabilities in place to ensure that the risk can be mitigated, but also ensure that we will be starting to look at who our implementation partners are, who may or may not be different from the software providers. That's the decision that needs to be made. But we need rigor in that procurement process to ensure we're partnering with the right organisations who will set us up for success. So that's my recommendation to take forward.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Did you have a seconder for your proposal?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor John Andrews. I'm sure one. With time ticking away on this end of life at 2027, December, I think we need to get on with this as quickly as possible. So I'm quite happy to second.
Thank you very much. I have a few points to make, but I'll look into non-cabinet members if they have any comments to make first. Nope.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Brian Hope. I'm the portfolio holder for Customer Culture and Community Engagement, ward member for Westham in Weymouth. And I think I just really want to support this paper going forward. I think it's very key to the success of our future council and our plan. But on the other side of things, recognising the risk with implementing a new ERP system, it does come with that risk because it's the heart of the business. If something goes wrong, the business can come down. So I'm really pleased to hear Councillor Wilson talk around the precautions we're taking there. But it's a risk if we do nothing also, and I think that's my caution here. One of the highest risks on our risk register, as Aidan Dunn knows I refer to quite regularly, is cybersecurity. And if we continue to use a platform that offers us no updates, no supports, the data we hold as an organisation will be at high risk. And we heard this evening examples of data we hold as a council on vulnerable people, all of our residents. So it's really, really important that we do move with the times to reduce that risk of cybersecurity. Also, from my own portfolio, I think this is very much key to the success of our new customer strategy that we've just approved. Went through the the People and Overview Resources Committee, as well as loads of other work streams that we've been discussing. So I really want to support this. And, you know, I offer Councillor Wilson my full support, anything we can do.
Thank you, Councillor Hope. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, portfolio holder for health and housing. And I forgot to mention last time I'm the ward member for Chickerell. I've just got a couple of questions on this. I'm not a techie person, so I hope these are okay. One of the questions in 3.4, we're talking about the finances of this, and we're talking about some quite large numbers here. What concerned me was when I read through the business case that is in the appendix, those are exactly the same figures, but the figures from the business case are dated March 2024. So I'm just wondering, we're a year on now, and what sort of contingencies have we got in place? Because I think the cost will probably be more this year than it was this time last year. And my second question is, as a non-techie person, how long do these platforms, or whatever you call, how long do they last before they start to become obsolete? We've already got one system that's going obsolete. I don't quite know how long we've had that one in for. But once we've purchased this, how long are we going to be able to use it for? Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, are you able to come back on that particular point?
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. The first thing I'll say, and then I will hand over to the techie person behind me. Because we're going out to procurement, we will get a revised set of costings. We'll obviously be looking at a number of providers, so that the number that you see in front of you won't I'm sure, be the same number in 3 months' time. We'd like it to be lower, but we have to work with that. I may ask Aidan to comment on contingency in general, if I can, and then maybe James can talk about lifespan of the system.
Thank you. Good evening. Aidan Dunn, Executive Director for Corporate Development. So I'll comment on paragraph 3.4. So there's two elements of the cost. One is the implementation cost, the cost of setting it up, and then the ongoing operating costs. So we've estimated the cost of implementation at 11.7 million. And as Councillor Wilson says, this is what the procurement process will be. So in 3 months or so time, when we come back to Cabinet, having been through a procurement process, asking for a contract award, we'll have a much more precise figure. And similarly, for those operating costs, the indication at the moment is the operating costs of a new system would be lower than the operating costs of our existing system. But once again, we've got to go through that procurement process. But you're right in terms of prices can go up as well as prices can go down. And this is one of the reflections that we put into our future council business case, where these figures were originally consolidated. And then plus we've got contingency built in the budget that was approved earlier this month as well. So the stepping stone is coming back to Cabinet with the full detail, and part of my role will be to prove and demonstrate that it is affordable, and if not, what the alternative is. But can I hand over to my colleague, James?
Good evening, James Aylward, Head of IT Operations. Well, I can't comment on the specific life cycle of each of the specific products that might be competing for this business. What I would say is these are enterprise class solutions that are used by much bigger organisations than ours, so they have very long shelf lives, if you like, in terms of that. One of the things that we'll be looking to assess as part of the procurement exercise is the roadmap of the solution from the vendor, so that we can understand some of that in terms of life cycle for length of availability of that product, and the sorts of changes that would be advantageous to our business as an organisation over the life of that solution. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Clifford.
Simon Clifford, Councillor of Chickerell Ward. 2 questions, one of which is specific first, which is, having been through this process before with another organisation and it going horribly wrong to such an extent I'm still scarred by it, can I just reinforce the idea that we take soundings from other organisations who have gone through this process or are going through this process and learn whatever we can before we get right into the meat of this matter. And the second one is, we started it as a general point about this meeting. We started this meeting talking about CHCs and ICBs, and we've ended it talking about ERPs. Can we please make our public documents legible and understandable to the public? You read the top line of this report, it's incomprehensible to a normal person out in the street. And this, if ever a report was designed to have an AI introduction to it, this was it.
Thank you very much. Yes, I too, I remember the original SAP system in DCC coming in and the pain that caused and the torturous process of getting it to work properly, which went on for months and months, I think, in some aspects, and also in other places I've worked. And there are numerous councils who've got into real financial difficulties. So it is, you know, it is not without risk, but you know, it's the way to do it. Perhaps slight concern is perhaps one for Aidan, is we've rather sort of publicly stated what we are prepared to pay and what the contingency will be within this sort of public report. Just makes me a bit nervous. I mean, clearly, you know, are we expecting anyone to come in lower than that, I guess?
Thank you. If I just comment on your previous point, Councillor Clifford's point for a second, I think it's very pertinent that we're aware of learning from other organisations, not least in the last few days, a public interest report around Birmingham City Council's implementation of a system has been published. And just a quick glance at the front page of that report about the key learnings, so things that we are really mindful of already, but it's important that we learn from. One of the crucial messages in that report is this sense of we're acquiring a product that the expense comes if you start to customize the product. So the key message here is that we buy a product through this procurement process that meets our needs, but we adapt our business processes to meet the product rather than the other way around. I think that's time and again one of the key learnings, and I think when I talk to colleagues that were involved with the implementation of SAP here, that's one of the learnings from the organisation as well. The point about learning from other organisations and indeed getting specialist support is crucial. So we last implemented this in 2009. It's something we do every sort of 18, 20 years. So we haven't necessarily got the skills and expertise and the current thinking to do it entirely ourselves. So we will need to have judicious use of external support, consultants, what have you, to make sure that we implement it properly. And that's why that we've got this, one of the appendices here describes the SOCTIM advisory that have been supporting us to this date. So sort of a flag there that this is one of those circumstances where we need specialist skills and we buy them in temporarily because we don't have people sat there doing this project once every 17, 20 years. And the final bit around, going back to your question, Chair, with this, what the indication here is based on market analysis from our experts. We'll be entering into a procurement process where price will be a factor, but also other factors such as what's contained in the product beyond just finance, HR and procurement, what other benefits are there, because we might be able to turn off other systems within the council because this becomes our big brain. So there is a competitive procurement process. It's a competitive market out there. Price is a very important factor for us, but we need to look at it in the wider sphere of what other sort of financial savings we can take from this, as well as what the opportunities it unlocks in the rest of the organisation. So I don't think by giving this sense of indication that it kind of fetters our hand, as it were. Thank you.
Very glad to hear that. Are there any other people who wish to speak? Steve Robinson.
Steve Robinson, Litchfield Minster and Upton Ward. I was one of those managers who, on the 31st of December 1999, stayed up all night next to the fire alarm panel, waiting to see if the Y2K bug was going to disrupt everybody's lives in the hostel and create a headache. It didn't, because people were thinking ahead, and it was great. So I went and had a good New Year's Day. Life was different back then. When we bought software, we bought it, we put it into computers on floppy disks, and we owned it. Nowadays, it's all about licensing and the flexibility that we have. So when we look at software packages, we tend not to look at what we own, we look at what we license. That gives us maybe future flexibility in what we're looking for. My question would be, because of the speed of change of technology at the moment, and the variation in prices are plummeting, but new technology costs a lot, what is the balance that we're going to be able to find between finding something that is groundbreaking, that is going to save us money and deliver better services to our residents, and doing something that just does the job that we want it to do now? So what's that balance between vision and what we could do, between just doing what we do now, only better?
Ben Wilson, South East Purbeck. Gosh, existential. The reality is that you're describing around what James would describe as software as a service. So we're, I would say there's a 99% chance that we'll be going to a cloud-based solution. And yes, you're quite right, being delivered as a license. The beauty of software as a service is that it allows the technology companies to provide you with updates on a regular basis, as we all get on our mobile phones every time it updates. And whereas in old world on-premise systems, you relied on having people in-house who could do that work. You actually get that delivered. So it's in many respects a cleaner environment. So you don't necessarily have to make a trade-off between getting those future those future capabilities, because the software providers are providing them to you as part of those licenses. Of course, there are trade-offs, as James already mentioned. There are multiple modules in these technologies, and so I think that's where maybe the balance comes in, where we've got to say what are the modules we absolutely need, and they're critical, versus some of the nice-to-haves, and that's where some of that optionality might come in. I mean, all of these licenses will vary depending on what exactly it is you are buying, and there is a menu of options. So I think that's really where we need to draw that balance and make sure we're only buying really what we need, and we're not ending up with extensive licenses that really offer us no value.
Thank you very much. We've got Councillor Hope.
Yes, thank you very much. It's quite interesting how this conversation is going, because I'm slightly different in maybe my views on this, because I think cost shouldn't be everything when we're looking at this. We need to actually have the right system to be beneficial, because spending a little bit more on the software could save 2-3 minutes every time we conduct that process, which is a bigger saving on the organisation. So yes, price, because the financial brief holder's looking at me with those eyes, and I don't like that normally. But I think we shouldn't be limited by price. We have to get the right software, and I think this is what this exercise is all about. Evaluating the risk. What's the right software? What's the right price? So the question this time, Chair, is will we also be inviting maybe a user group from our employees to look at these different softwares in different functions to see it actually works best for this organisation? Because yes, I understand what Aidan said around designing our processes around the software, but I think there is an excess of having user-friendly software, and I'm talking from experience of using another acronym, an MRP system, Simon. So it's all about having that right software to allow us to do the jobs more efficiently, user face for the organisation. So sometimes that may cost a bit more, but long-term savings. So the question there is, we'll be looking at a staff user group to actually look at some of this software, to look at how actually user-friendly it is, time savings on some of their possible processes, and if processes have got to change, implementation, because yes, implementing it takes time, but then also the training off the back of that can take far longer.
I'll try to respond, and then I'll let James respond in terms of the process. I mean, going back to what I was saying to Councillor Robinson, when you're buying software as a service, you disadvantage yourself if you are customizing it, because you're causing restrictions in how those updates can then be bought in by the system provider. So really, to echo what Aidan said, you do want to have minimum customizations. So and the risk of having user groups involved at this stage might be that they look at it from a how do I do things today? Does this fit how I do things today? I would be saying it's a great idea to bring user groups in, as long as it's in the right circumstance, so they understand they're looking at the future ways of working and not trying to fit it to their current processes. And that is quite often a risk, and that is one of the reasons these implementations take longer and become more expensive, because people end up trying to customize them to the way they do things today. But that said, I think it is as I say, in the right circumstance, I think that's a really positive idea. I'll hand over to James.
Thank you. James Elwood, Head of IT Operations. Councillor Hope, your points, I think, is absolutely correct, that there is a fine balance to be made in the procurement process between optimising cost, because it's financially beneficial to keep the cost as low as possible, and optimizing the quality of the product to be adopted within the organisation that affects how people work, and most specifically affects their productivity over time. So it is not a simple equation of the lowest cost is financially best for the organisation. We need to account for the lived experience of using that solution over time, and how efficient and effective it is for the organisation to operate with that platform. And we live some of that experience with the current SAP implementation, where it doesn't address some of those needs, and as a result of that, we see cost in the organisation in terms of how we operate. With regards to your specific question, we're working up at the moment who will be engaged in software demonstrations as part of the procurement exercise. So it will be quite a wide-ranging group of people, primarily focused on professional disciplines, but there will be room for users of the system within that.
And if I could just come in a quick final point, and it's a subtlety. In terms of the recommendations of this paper, the delegation is actually to Jan for the point that this, we're very carefully trying to position this as not as a IT project that finance have got a vice-like grip on keeping the costs down. This is about tooling up the organisation to be more effective for the future. And Jan is kind of with the sort of the largest sort of workforce, or one of the largest workforce in the council. That's why we've sort of, Jan oversees the project from a project sponsor rather than myself. So I'm heavily involved, but we're seeing Jan as the overall sponsor in that regard.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Hobbs-Joe.
Thank you. Councillor Hannah Hobbs-Joe, Ferndown South Ward. I'm sure it has been, but with the potential for devolution down the road as well, and the potential for changes in services that we may or may not provide, has that been, or will it be factored into the cost and how we go out to procure that? If we, I know it's all a bit open-ended at the moment, but B, also the sort of services that might be factored in and actually might then need to integrate with some other software to deal with the kind of devolution parts of it. Thank you.
It's a good question. I think I know the answer to that, but who would like to? Ben or James?
James Aylward, Head of IT Operations. We anticipate that the organisation will change. So outside of devolution as an issue, we anticipate that the organisation will change. And so I think the response is probably still valid for the question specifically around devolution, in that we want to understand, particularly from a cost perspective and a flexibility of licensing perspective, what flexibilities we will have in different scenarios of different size of organisation. So with the Our Future Council programme looking to deliver a smaller organisation in future, what might that mean for the solution and the choice that we make? With devolution, as yet unknown in terms of what that might mean for us in future. But if we as an organisation were hosting any elements of that for a combined authority, that might mean growth in the size of what we're trying to do. And then similarly, what might that do? So we're trying to account for that, to understand the flexibilities of that within the decision-making process under the procurement.
You happy there? Thank you. I've just got one final thing to take up Councillor Hope's point and perhaps unpack that a little more. It seems to me that the procurement, that the scoring exercise is really key. And is there have you worked out a sort of weighting in terms of cost, performance, and all the other things? And how's that process? Because that's really key. That who does that and the team that does it, and getting that balance right, and learning from perhaps where it hasn't worked so well and they got that balance wrong, you know. Is that well matured, sort of developed, or is that still work in progress? And who's doing that, please? maybe you don't want to give away that, you know, I don't expect to say this is the weighting, but a confidence, I think Cabinet would like to know that there's a extensive work to get this right, and that it's, you know, it's not just finger in the air stuff, it's really some logic behind it.
Thank you. So just to clarify, I'm not going to give any information that would sort of prejudice a procurement subject to the outcome of the discussions this evening. So yeah, we've got a working group, and as recently as yesterday, we were looking at the weighting between price and non-price aspects, taking into account the points that Councillor Hope was mentioning. So, and as part of our thinking, we've very much taken into consideration the advice that Socketim Advisory, who have got the market intelligence for us, who have been advising us on the relative merits of the relative weighting to make sure that we get what we need. So striking that right balance, as we described, between price and other factors. So it is a sophisticated analysis which we can share behind outside of the meeting if members would like further detail.
Thank you very much. That's very reassuring. Are there any other further questions? I can't see any. In that case, does anyone disagree with the recommendation to go ahead, which is, you know, a really important decision to make here? And I think more than fingers crossed, we hope we get that right team on there really doing their homework, because we've got to try and get it as best as possible and get a good deal, I think. So in that case, that is accepted. Thank you very much for that. Just on the agenda, we've got no, any urgent items? Not here any. Any exempt business? No exempt business. In that case, it could bring this meeting to a close. And thank you very much, Chief Exec, for everything, for your final meeting in Cabinet. Thank you. Good night. Thank you very much for your attendance.